This is a previously recorded episode of the IT and the D Show.
Welcome back. This is segment 2, episode 130, the post-Super Bowl edition of the IT and the D Show, or as Dave liked to call us, 2.5 geeks. This is Bob, the sales guy.
I'm still lobbying for a name change.
No.
This is the half.
Me. I'm a sales guy. Sitting to my left is Dave, the geek, running the soundboard, and to my right, Nuri, the FNG. Find us online, ITintheD.com. Do us a favor. Give us a likes on the Facebook. We got Nuri. We got Randy and Ian hanging out in Twitterville. Hit us up at ITintheD. And do us a favor. We're up to like 57 now. Love the iTunes reviews. Keep them coming. Even though you think our microphones suck, we're working on the sound stuff.
It was still a 5-star review.
It was
5-star. Get new mics.
Love the content. You guys are great. Your mics suck. Like, we just got new mics. Like, what do we do now? Crap. But hey, if you're an Apple user and you haven't gotten Execute Order 53, hit us up on iTunes and leave us a review. Even if it's a bad one, we appreciate the feedback regardless. Again, mark your calendars. February 18th, casual meetup at Hamlin Corner. March 10th, the granddaddy of them all, the Pink Slip Party, Majestic Theater. Is it still a traffic debacle down there with the rocket train or whatever they're going to call it? God almighty. But hey, we're doing good stuff and it's free and you don't have to deal with idiots. So
other than us,
go park at Hopcat and we'll have a beer with us and we'll walk over. But yeah, the floor is yours, Maestro. This is way out of my scope. All I know is oh my God, are you kidding me? This is happening like a half an hour north of my house.
Yeah.
And, we avoided talking about it. And I think we're at the place now where we have the right resources. We have as much information as humanly possible.
Well, I mean, I
didn't want to jump to conclusions on any of it, right? I wanted to make sure we digested and assessed.
Well, and we didn't want to be the knee-jerk pundits that, were, blaming this person, blaming that person, blaming this commission, whatever. I mean, and we didn't want to just do it kind of off the cuff. And then Russ Dotson actually reached out and said, hey, what would you think about, having a show about it and, bringing in a couple of people that actually know what they're talking about. So it was perfect timing. We are. We are joined by Kathy Horton. I want to make sure I get this right, who's the president of the Community Foundation of Greater Flint. We have Dr. Marty Kaufman from U of M, who specializes in all things water and is heading up I believe it's the GIS mapping of all the water flows and everything going on in the area.
The pipes.
Yes. The math on that has to be amazing. Rob Canos, who's a lifelong Flint resident, so you've been in the midst of this all along the way. And, of course, Russ, who, as we mentioned earlier, had the perfect timing of closing on his house in Flint a month before all this news broke.
I can't complain about buying my house in 2006 and then the market crashed. Russ has got me beat by 1,000.
Yeah, I don't technically know if it would be legal for me to sell my house right now because...
Seriously?
Yeah, they worry about lead paint.
Yeah, I don't know. If you have your house is lead contaminated, you have to have it abated before you can sell it. And I can't abate it because the lead continues to come in every day. And even if I could, I don't believe there are too many mortgage companies in America who would finance anybody to buy a house in Flint, Michigan.
So the dumb question from the dumb guy in the room. So do you have to go to the truck stop to shower, or is it your home habitable?
My home is habitable. I did have my water tested. I closed on my house, and then 2 weeks later, Leanne Walters is a family friend, and she's the one who pioneered getting VOTEC to come up and do the testing. And she said, you need to get your water tested. So I did, and after I let my water run for 10 minutes, I fall below the 5 parts per billion limit.
But wasn't it true the filters they were giving wasn't even touching the surface?
This was before filters.
Okay,
this
all
was
right.
Before any of that. So if I do let my water run for 10 minutes, and that's what I do, I'm comfortable showering in that. Other neighborhoods are way worse than mine.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, who thinks to do that? Like, you go to buy a house, who thinks to, hey, I should have the water tested, I should, have it.
There are processes that follow that, and your appraisal is responsible for following those processes, checking and notification. However, the seller in this case would be responsible to notify me if there was asbestos in the house,
right?
Or it's contained, and there is asbestos piping in my house, and it's sealed,
right?
Good to go. Sellers obviously didn't know there was lead contamination in the house. Nobody knew that.
I mean, so I guess, Dave brought it up earlier. Well, how did we get here? Right? Because this isn't something like you flip a switch and boom, we got lead in your water. this is years and years. I mean,
No, actually, it pretty much was flipping a switch, I think.
well, I know about the whole switch of the water, and they had to go to the Flint River. I guess so. Let's start there. How do we get here?
Okay, Flint obviously was in please, anybody chime in. Flint was, of course, in a state of financial emergency, and the governor sent a series. I think we had 4 or 5 emergency managers, 4 of them over the course of 2 years.
This is going to be the end of 2012, like it was winter of 2012,
Yes,
maybe?
I think I think it was before that. I think December of 2012 was the first time anybody uttered the words about using Flint River water. Flint has got its water from Detroit for living memory, which of course comes from Lake Huron, is treated and put through our water system. Flint had signed on. How do I pronounce the name of that? The
Karagandhi.
Karagandhi Water Project, which is a new water line that's coming in directly east. There was a gap, though, when the Detroit water contract ended, and when that pipeline was going to come online. So the decision was made by a series of folks to use the Flint River water as a bridge.
Now, was that a monetary decision? I mean,
It was purely a monetary
Okay.
decision. I mean, Detroit water is not cheap, but in the final analysis, Detroit Public Works, I'm going to say Public Works for lack of a better term, tried to renegotiate contracts with Flint to cover that year, and Flint wanted to stay off of that. The water treatment experts said that, yes, in fact, you can make Flint River water safe to drink. And I think that the price tag on that, the savings on that, was supposed to be something in the neighborhood of $12 million a year, which is, significant money to a city like Flint, who is in financial restriction.
Right, and under an EM, and yeah.
Right. That was what simply happened. After that, there were a series of, I believe, failures at a few different levels that the water wasn't treated with an anti-corrosive as it was supposed to be treated.
Well, apparently what I read was they treated it, and where it sat was fine. It's when it went through the pipes and it wasn't treated, that's when it picked up the quote-unquote lead. And that
Right.
was
The
the
lead,
problem.
of course, did not come from the Flint River. The lead came from the infrastructure
Correct.
that exists.
There were other things that came from the Flint River too, right? So it was E. coli that came from the Flint River possibly, or?
I can't speak to that, Dr. Kaufman. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Well, at first there was an E. coli problem. People had there were several boil water alerts in the city. Then there was a problem with what's called total trihalomethanes. Those are 4 compounds that react with chlorine, they're organic acid, that are formed with the reaction of chlorinating water that has a high amount of organic content to it. So if you switch to river water, you have to be cognizant of that fact that you run the risk of having these what they call disinfection byproducts, meaning after you disinfect the water with chlorine, you're going to form harmful compounds. Now those by themselves takes a lot of them to cause medical damage. There's a fairly high tolerance for those. But that was sort of insidious in a way because it masked the lead problem for a while, is that the focus was on that, and meanwhile people weren't testing for lead. But the water was so corrosive that it began leaching lead from what we call the service lines that run from the mains, which are made of cast iron, into the house. That 30 or 40 foot pipe that comes at a right angle off the mains into your house.
So how many cooks were in this proverbial kitchen? Because you look at, everything you read, EPA was involved, DEQ was involved, a lot of smart people that go above, like in the political sense of the term.
A lot of what are supposed to be smart people.
Well,
And you said EPA and political in the same sentence? Yes.
subject matter experts, right? But it seems like there's how many more cooks in the kitchen that we don't know about, or was that it?
There may be a few more that we don't know about.
Okay.
A good question to ask is why were they pushing so hard for the switchover to the Karagandhi pipeline?
That's an excellent question.
Because
We could have stayed with Detroit Water for that year.
Well, yeah, because it sounds like that there were a couple of back and forths that went on, where Detroit basically came back, or the Detroit River or Detroit Water Authority came back and said, okay.
Detroit Water Authority made 9 separate offers to I don't know how to say, the city manager, the city council, or the city of Flint to renew that contract or to keep Flint. Flint's a good customer. There's a lot of people in Flint. There's 75,000, 80,000 people in Flint.
Right.
the largest.
Everybody would want to keep those customers.
Yeah, when you call Comcast and say, I'm going to cancel, suddenly your rates drop and things are better.
And I think the best offer that Flint received from Detroit was 50% of what they had been paying, which would be less than what you're paying over in Oakland County.
Wow.
But the decisions were made, and I don't know why those decisions were made or why to switch to the new water source coming from a different location. I'm sure that will come out relatively soon on why those decisions are made, or at least some ideas about that. When this water started going through the pipes, like the doctor said, it started leaching lead simply into the system. And that's where we are now. And switching back to Detroit water didn't fix any problems.
Well, and so I think that's one of the things that people have missed is that there has been a switch.
Yes, it was that in October?
October.
That we made the switch back to Detroit water.
So how long was Flint off of the Detroit Water Authority?
19 months.
Yeah, 19 months all.
So about a year and a half, okay.
So that's a question I wanted to ask was, before we knew about it, how long has this been going on?
19
months. So there's been a quote-unquote crisis happening that got zero publicity, at least outside of the city area.
Honestly, it wasn't getting that much publicity in Flint. I was not aware.
But if your water comes out looking like Verner's, you're going to tweet that out like really fast.
Mine didn't. I mean, my water wasn't that funny brown color.
You figure if it was 19 months in the making, you just bought the house a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Right.
You'd think if it was in the news out there, he'd have thought twice about it.
No, well, was it actually 19 months? Because it wasn't the switch over to the Flint River that caused the problem. It was when they detected E. coli in the water and tried to treat it, and it was the byproducts of the treatment that's what caused the issue, or no, was it actually...
No, the water itself was highly corrosive. It's
itself,
river water, and there's a lot of...
tannic acid and things like that, right?
Biology in river water that's not in lake water, and that makes it... Was it alkali or base?
It was acidic.
It was acidic, so... that burned off a lot of the corrosion that was in the pipes, a good corrosion, and then started leaching everything through there. The chlorine didn't help.
You got a double whammy in older cities, too, because a lot of it's not just the pipes outside. Flint's average age of home is 1942. It's 74 years old.
Wow.
Any home built before 1950 is probably going to have a lead service line coming into the house.
Yep.
But also, inside the house, you're going to have fixtures that are brass, and before 2011, most brass fixtures were about 8% lead, and those could leach lead. You're going to have copper plumbing, or even galvanized, that's going to be joined with solder that has lead.
That's my house, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you've got lead leaching in the house as well, and not just outside. It wasn't until 1986, as an amendment to the Safe Drinking Water Act, that lead was outlawed in plumbing. So if you have a house that had any plumbing work done before the 80s, the mid-80s, or was built before 1950, there's a good chance there's some lead that your water's passing over before it hits you at the tap.
And no one thinks of that. No one.
Well, to a large extent, most of the DPWs, they treat the water with anti-corrosives that it mitigates that, prevents that, or mitigates that, and that has been going on in Flint.
Right, because it's not the water itself. It's what happens when the water hits the pipes.
Well, exactly. I believe that the water that they treated from the Flint River in the water treatment facility in Flint, Michigan, I believe you could have drank that water all day long and you'd be perfectly fine. But when it went through the pipes, that changed the nature of the water.
Well, we've been reading so much, and I don't know how much is information or misinformation. And something I keep reading over and over, and it's like, hey, if they would have just used this $1,000 a month or week or whatever it was treatment, everything would have been fine. Is that total? You're nodding, but is that total bupkis, or is that the legitimacy to that?
A lot of people think that for $80 to $100 a day for the anti-corrosion treatment, a lot of these problems might not have happened.
Really?
Yeah.
So there's truth to that.
Some, but there's...
No, he said a lot of people believe.
Right, right.
You got to remember, as old as Flint's housing stock is, the pipes are also that old. They were built when the city grew during the 1920s and the 1950s. These old cast iron pipes have about a 100-year lifespan. Now, if my math is right, we're coming up on that. And Flint's getting over 350 pipe main breaks a year.
Oh, my God.
One a day. And when you have pipe ruptures, you have to shut the water off. Contamination can come into the pipe. Stagnant water can leach more lead.
Right.
There's big issues with infrastructure that's not just Flint related, but it's also endemic to a lot of cities around the country that are older. The American Society of Civil Engineers does a report card every 4 years, kind of the Infrastructure Olympics. Mm-hmm. And they've given water infrastructure in the United States a D+.
Oh,
and they say we need something like $4 trillion in investment in order to keep up.
So Flint can kind of be the canary in the coal mine when it comes to our water. It's
absolutely the canary in the coal mine.
Well, and that's what you're starting to hear more and more of on the news is that, oh, by the way, it isn't just Flint. It's, there are all these other cities with these similar issues that are being masked currently that are going to start coming to light. And that's, I guess the best analogy or an analogy that people could understand is, you look at, the automotive crisis that happened. And so much of that happened because of the legacy infrastructure of, a GM that's, a 100-year-old company and all of the, the pensions and that, all that legacy stuff that was always there that until they figured out a way to get rid of that, they couldn't move forward. That sounds like what you're saying Flint's about to have to go through, like a complete overhaul and replacement of the infrastructure of being a city.
Absolutely, but it's not just Flint. I mean, we're in what the American Water Works Association calls the replacement era. We're in a place where many cities are faced with the prospect of having bad water delivery in the next 20 years, where we have health risks because of our pipes.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I don't even. So, well, and I guess that's not just the E. coli part of it, but so one of the things that's been coming up recently is the outbreak of Legionnaires. Mm-hmm. So, how does that tie in with this, or does it?
It might. We don't know for sure. Legionnaires you have trouble tracking Legionnaires because you get strands from the water and also strands from the victim. So it's difficult to correlate those two after time.
For those not in the know, what is Legionnaires?
It's really similar to tuberculosis.
It's a virulent form of pneumonia.
Okay.
And you obtain it from essentially mist. You can get it. Shower heads have had Legionnaires present, bacteria.
Wow, and the mortality rate is between 5 to 30% and approaches 50% in some places.
Yeah, if you're immune compromised, it's really rough on you.
Wow.
Now, those the data that I've seen has spiked since the turnover, but I don't think anybody's been able to draw any conclusions about.
Well, yeah, it's the whole coincidence is not causality.
Yes,
but also where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
All right, so back to I'm thinking more of the switchback, right? So we switched back to the Detroit water system. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of false starts in between there, right? There were a couple of offers where Flint did not actually accept a switchback from the Flint system, or no?
What's we saying? There was 9.
There were many offers. That was all. Most of those offers were before Flint. The emergency manager, and I'm sorry, there was a few ones that was at Ambrose was the final no.
Well, the final, but probably Darnell Early, I think, was the period when.
Yeah, when the emergency manager Early said, no, we're not coming back to you. And Detroit said, okay, guys, and your contract's done, and they did the complete switch over. Now, as far as switching back, there were some false starts with that. The Flint City Council petitioned the emergency manager to do everything they could to switch back to Detroit Water immediately, and they did not want to do that. That was also purely a financial thing. That's a $12 million reconnect fee.
But the city, Detroit, offered to waive that reconnect fee in January of last year, right?
Yes. They did do that. There's still logistic costs,
of course,
involved in that. But at that time, with what the DEQ was saying and what the city was saying, is that, no, the water's fine. The one interesting quote that came.
Yeah, but as I mentioned too, it's the water's fine where.
Well, there was an interesting email that came out relatively recently with a DEQ employee responded to a complainer saying, we're the Department of Environmental Quality, not the Department of Tasty Water. Because most of the complaints,
Really?
a resident
Wow.
is complaining about. A resident is complaining about the smell of water or the taste of water. A resident cannot tell that there's lead in their water. A resident
course.
cannot tell that there's E. coli. I don't know, but I mean, there obviously was
I
something.
just know
wrong.
that it's wrong.
Yeah, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
I also don't know how to fly airplanes, but I'm pretty confident that I can tell whether or not you can too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think that it's important too. Russ has been talking about this idea of an emergency manager. I think that that's an important thing to touch on too. Like from where I'm standing from a constituent standpoint, is that we're talking about an individual who's an appointed individual who basically is like superseding the local government, like making these decisions. And he's put into place. He's basically we're talking about an individual who's like main focus is being a bean counter, and like we're looking for like the most affordable way to get out of something.
Went through it with Detroit.
Right now, and then like you're looking at the Detroit schools and things like this, and often the most affordable way is not the best way
Right.
to proceed. And we're also talking about like my. I'm one of the cats that have been buying this water, and like to hear that there's an individual who's putting a $sign on your head, and I understand there's no illusions about it. Flint's not rolling in the dough, but at the same time, we're talking about putting $signs on people's heads.
Well, when was the first case of lead poisoning, actually? When did that happen, right? So all this was going on. When did someone actually notice that there is a problem?
A woman named Leanne Walters' son Gavin was the first person that was, I believe, diagnosed with lead poisoning, and that would have been in 2014. I think it was fall of 2014. I'd have to look that up to be sure about that, but
I mean, because that's something we heard about when we were kids. I mean, granted, I'm 42.
paint chips.
Right,
Paint chips, yeah.
and we always kind of scoffed at it and going, yeah, because the kids that are do you eat paint chips as a kid, Tommy Boy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or like chewing on the windowsill. It's like give me, or don't eat your pencils.
Yeah,
you'll get lead
exactly.
poisoning. But it's like you never heard of it like a legitimate. You may have, but nobody tweeted about it back then, so it could have happened and we didn't even know about it. But the fact that now it's happening again, it's like, are you kidding me? Like. One of those things that goes away and you don't think about it. Now it's become so prevalent.
Well, the first issues that happened with the Walters family, just a lot of skin rashes and stuff. They had a swimming pool, and their kids would get in the pool and they'd come out and they'd have a rash.
You think that's chlorine?
Too much chlorine.
Yeah,
Too
could be.
much.
Well, that's
Yeah.
I mean, when they took their kids to the doctor. I mean, no one's thinking about toxic lead exposure.
No,
right?
right.
But their hair was falling out
The
too.
hair's falling.
Oh, my
out.
God.
They're getting rashes.
Chlorine doesn't do that.
There's
Makes her
all
hair
these issues.
red or whatever my kids or purple. My kids' hair was.
And finally, when after she started getting her water tested and her water looked at, and she had the Virginia Tech people test her water. They came to her house because they thought that there's something wrong with their test protocol, because it's not possible for anybody to have this much lead in their water. And they came and tested her in her home, and it was worse. And then she got a call from the city: stop drinking your water, don't do anything immediately. And I wish I knew the date exactly.
Well, yes. I mean, it was in February of 2015,
Was it
where
February
it was 100 parts per billion, where apparently
That was the city.
5 is bad. That was the city test.
That was the city test.
And then it was April when the other group came out and did the testing, and it was more than 3 times the lead content that the EPA classifies as toxic waste.
There's been a lot of talk about the testing protocol that the city used against what the VATEC team used. The city tests were having residents flush their systems, turn their water on for a period of time before they took a sample.
And I think that's actually pretty characteristic of a lot of cities in the Midwest, right?
It is, especially if you want to pass your state guidelines.
Let it run for 2 minutes, then give us a sample, right? That's pretty much what people have.
I don't know a lot about lead testing in general, but when I talked to Mark from the VATEC team, he said that's not the way to test for lead in your water.
There's 2 types. There's the first draw sample, which is taken after your water's been sitting at least 6 hours stagnant in the pipe. So typically, the first time you get up in the morning, and that's
Get ready to go hop in the shower.
right,
Yeah.
and that's your test, and you're supposed to let it out fairly rapidly.
Or,
too.
God, make a pot of coffee.
Well, I think every house does it. We have a fairly new house. It's 8 years old, 9 years old. If I get water out of a bathroom sink, I'm letting it run for a minute and a half.
Just to get cold?
I don't know why. It's like maybe I just
do.
grew up that way. I don't. Again, it's something inherent that I just grew up with, right?
Yeah. Then the other test is a flush test, when you let it run for 10 minutes and go with that.
Now, with that test, that's when she came up with the 100 plus parts per billion, which
So that was with that was a flush system test.
Yes.
in her particular house, and she was in a very bad spot. That was with a flush test and with a home filter. There's filters that you can put right after your main entry to your house to filter out lead and everything else. So her house was in the perfect storm of horrible lead contamination.
Well, yeah, because at one point it wasn't like the solution was basically, okay, we're just going to turn off her water at the street and hook her up to the neighbor's house with a garden hose.
Yeah, exactly what they did. They screwed a garden hose onto her next door neighbor's house. And
Whose idea was that?
that was a city, and it actually works. If there's something wrong with your main, something from the street, you can actually do that with your neighbors, and that does put water through your house, and that's what they did with her house.
But wouldn't your neighbor's house, if it's that bad, have the same issues that your house has?
Ironically, and I don't understand, her neighbor's lead was nowhere near her level.
In a lot of old cities, sometimes all the lead is gone because it's been washed away by corrosion. It depends. It's a case-by-case basis.
Where you are on the line,
It's where you are.
Yeah.
It has to do with.
That's crazy.
It has to do with the type of the chemistry at the pipe over a specific period of time. It could build up a scale that could protect you from lead leaching into your line, but if that scale's not there, then a lot of lead can leach, and it's it depends a lot on different conditions.
So, Kathy, I want to get you involved a little bit. So, kind of gone through the timeline. You're involved pretty actively in the community. Rob, hop in on this too. But where are we at today? We see the stuff on the press, and all the big celebrities and the rappers are delivering trucks and bottles of water, and then you hear stop bringing water, and what's going on today, and what does everybody need? I guess that's a good start.
So tons and tons and tons of water have been delivered from all over the U.S., a huge amount of bottled water.
And thank you.
Yeah, and that was great, but honestly now there is no place left to store it. So water is not the issue. Most filters are working. Filters have been distributed to all households.
Are these like just regular Brita brand filters?
No, not Brita. These are national certified for lead, so they are not. Most of them are not your typical.
So these are not regular
Brita.
consumer. Go to Costco and buy.
Well, so let's take a step back from that. I mean, let's talk about who's on the ground now doing this stuff. So I mean, I know laughably, and unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight. Dr. Mona, we saw her Thursday night at the Pistons game. We were laughably 4 rows behind her when she was sitting there, and I didn't want to be that guy and run up and tap her on the shoulder and be like, "Haha, you're going to be on our show Monday night." But they were giving a lot of facts and information about it, and so it's the Red Cross is there. You've got. The
Michigan National Guard, the Michigan Air National Guard are both there too.
So, okay.
There's an emergency operations center that the state has set up once the state of emergency was declared, and that's what brought in the National Guard. The Red Cross has been completely deployed.
So now, when did that happen? Just from a timing, I just want to make sure I have this all wrapped in my head.
Between 3 and 4 weeks ago.
Wow. So the first case of lead poisoning was back in April of 2015. Doctors were noticing it happening in September, where there were children with elevated blood levels of lead. Water was switched back in October, and basically it took until now pretty much to issue a state of emergency.
There was a mayoral election going on, and when the new mayor came in, she was absolutely adamant.
She was there at the game as well. Very well spoken.
It had to be a state of emergency had to be declared. So she started that. Then there's a protocol with that. It had to go to the county. The county took a couple of days and said yes. Then it went to the state. The state reacted actually pretty quickly with that. And it was really when the state of emergency that was declared that suddenly people began to realize how serious of an issue this was. So the first line of defense was getting water into homes, whether that was filters and bottled water, and that, I would say, for a 2 to 3 week period, it was all about water, water, water. That continues to be some concerns in some households. They are doing the proper anti-corrosive treatment to the waters now. There's some testing that shows that the pipes are relining to where there are better results with the water. All of that positive. But Dr. Mona, who's really the kind of community champion on all of this, said about 3 weeks ago, as we were starting to see everybody get concerned, long after there's no longer a water crisis, this community is going to have a lead crisis. And that's really where the Community Foundation comes in. Community foundations are places where people typically go to leave money to address long-term community issues.
Right.
And so she came to us, established a fund, and then began basically telling the world about we need to not only care about getting the water restored, but have resources for these kids and their families whose lifelong trajectory is altered. That lead is a neurotoxin that is irreversible. And so we established the Flint Child Health and Development Fund, better known as flintkids.org.
Said, grab my notebook just so I can make sure I got that right.
Right. And so, and the same kind of outpouring around water is now happening in terms of actual cash coming in to help these families over the long haul.
What can they do? You said it's irreversible.
So there are some things that they can do to slightly ameliorate the effect. Nutrition is a huge important thing. So high vitamin C, high iron, high calcium, very, very important for children who have become lead poisoned. So that's kind of the first thing we're looking at. It's going to be very important that these kids have the best early childhood interventions that are possible, because lowering of the IQ is a typical side effect of lead poisoning, and there's evidence that if they are in really top-notch early childhood programs, they have a better chance of still living into a more complete potential than if not. Having a medical home is very critical. So the fund is meant to provide the supports that whatever government isn't going to come through with, and that's probably the most frustrating thing right now, is that we don't really know what the state or the feds are going to come through with. And it needs to...
What was it, $80 million that just got freed up for this? And that sounds like it's a drop in the bucket.
Well, the $80 million was a presidential order, and it was our infrastructure for Michigan. Apparently the president can't give federal money to a city.
Gotcha.
But it was infrastructure for Michigan.
Right. It's a revolving loan. Low interest revolving loan, and they're looking to see how much of that could end up coming to Flint. I've heard $17 million is kind of what could become available, which is a complete drop in the bucket in terms of the infrastructure issues. So if you talk to Flint residents, what they really want is to see the pipes replaced. That's just every resident you talk to is that until the pipes are replaced, they will never trust water.
Which means basically digging up every single street, every single yard, pretty much.
Well, there's also some other aspects in there. We used to have a lot of automotive manufacturing plants. Fisher 1, colloquially known as Fisher 1, the first Fisher body plant, which is gone. All of the waterworks that were under Fisher 1 are still there. So a lot of the water systems, I understand, flow through there. And there's a lot of areas in Flint where you can't go because the ground itself is toxic, so there's a lot of water issues.
I think the infrastructures are some of the most complex issues that are still being ironed out. We're really hopeful that within the next couple of weeks that there will be a game plan. I think the other part that the community realizes, though, is that we need to get and identify these kids as quickly as possible. If Dr. Mona were here, she would say it's critical to treat this as a population-wide intervention.
That sounds like you have to.
Right.
Well, you do because the lead in your blood goes away after a period of time, but the effects that it had on you don't.
Right.
So a kid
the blood test is only good for about 20 to 30 days after the initial exposure.
Wow.
And then the lead goes from your blood into organs and bones and tissue. And then you can get a lot of false positive tests. So you really have to assume that all kids, and it's the birth to babies in utero 0 to 6 that by far are the most vulnerable.
So that's when they're developing, right? So
yes.
if lead poisoning causes developmental effects, it's going to stunt their emotional growth, their neurological growth. I'm not a doctor.
Right.
I only play one on TV, but
So we got an interesting tweet from a friend of mine, Mike. He's got a friend of his that's 30, and since he's basically single 30, he couldn't find any testing for lead because he wasn't a child. Is there anything addressing the adult population, or is it just the kids? Or
No, it's not just children. Any residents, any family, and
Where do they go?
get that. The best place to go is to the Red Cross, who will help, or to call 211.
Okay.
And 211 will direct them according to what they really need.
wow.
Yeah, no, interesting.
So there's lots of water. There's people on the ground. There's money coming in. I see a lot of things on the internet. People want to send money or want to send water or send prayers. Which one of these things are going to work, or what does Flint need from people right now that can help with the efforts?
Well, not water right now. We've got a really good supply of water. I would say they need cash is absolutely a necessity. I mean, we're going to need to raise significant resources to complement whatever government starts coming in. And that's really what the Flint Kids Fund is all about. This is specific. We expect to have a 20-year path with these children, and they will need to be followed for those until they go into their adulthood. And so we're looking at millions and millions and millions of dollars that will be needed to really support these families.
And that's not just a medical issue either. The lead poisoning in kids has been proven to lead to a lot of emotional issues, violent behavior issues. That intervention needs to happen early and fast to get those things addressed. So talking about the Flint juvenile justice system is not going to be able, as it stands, in the Flint scholastic system, where if you get in a fight at school, you're suspended, done, go. We need to have those things looked at.
You're going to think about education, right? I mean, how do you handle basically an entire generation of kids that have?
So I'll tell you what. We're running a little long. I want to make sure we take a break, let everybody hit the bathroom, grab a drink. Huh?
It's 10:30. Never mind.
I'm thinking we ran about 40 minutes. We'll take a quick break. We'll run the next 40 minutes. We'll just do 3 segments tonight, and we'll be good. So, because I know you and I had talked a little bit offline about some of the challenges that are going on with what's like getting things distributed, that sort of thing. So let's take a quick break. It'll be about 7 minutes, and then we'll dive back into challenges going on currently, and then how we look at down the road.
This is the IT and the D show, and we'll be right back.
IT and the D. Read, meet, listen. Networking Detroit. One beer at a time.
Hi, I'm Brittany Daniel from The Game, and you're listening to IT and the D Show.
ITintheD.com.
This is a previously recorded episode of the IT and the D Show.
Welcome back. This is the IT and the D Show, episode 130. We are hanging out here live in Podcast Detroit in beautiful Ferndale, Michigan. This is Bob the Sales Guy, hanging out with Dave the Geek, Nuri the FNG. Find us online, ITintheD.com. Don't forget to check out our Learn page. We are still teaming up with Career Academy, offering a year's worth of IT curriculum and pre-exam training for $29 that you can get any of your basic CompTIAs, Microsoft, Cisco, ethical security hackers. You can get an associate degree. So if you got any complaints about affording college or getting an IT cert, check them out. Go to the Learn tab on the ITintheD.com page. $29 for a year's worth of all-you-can-eat curriculum.
Well, and that's also on, we just launched the Deals tab, because it's one of the deals we've got out there along with Falling Down and some of the other stuff that we've got going on, and the Watch tab that has all the videos, the videos that we've done with Kari so far for these, as well as some of the videos from our previous Pink Slip Party events and that kind of stuff.
And the Meat tab is where you find out about our events. That's MEET, not M-E-A-T.
Yeah, we're still not selling private label meat sticks yet.
We're getting there.
All right, so let's dive right back in here. So we started talking about challenges going on currently, and I'll be honest, one of the things, like as soon as the mics went off, and this always happens, the best things always happen during the break, and like just the aha moment, it didn't even dawn on me, as I'm sure it hasn't dawned on a lot of people, that we're not just talking about the population of Flint here. You've got all the kids that were going to the U of M Flint. You've got all of the workers that were driving into the city daily, and drinking coffee, drinking water, doing all this kind of stuff. How do you even start to account for that? How's that being tracked and handled at this point?
Yeah, I would say the focus really is on the most vulnerable population, which is really the young children, 0 to 6. So not that lead doesn't have some issues with adults, but the real focus has been at this point because it is the most serious, because it's developing, it's affecting their neurological development.
Right. So
I don't know that there's a great deal of alarm. I certainly haven't run into a whole lot in terms of the effect with an older population yet.
I don't know about that either. I'm not a doctor, but there's second and third order effects that we also alluded to during the break. University of Michigan Flint, was it 5 years ago, bought up big chunks of land and built dormitories there to become a college where people send their children to live, as did Kettering, the old GMI. Wrap your mind around sending your 16-year-old or your 18-year-old kid to college in Flint, Michigan right now. What do you think enrollment's going to look like?
Yeah, U of M or not U of M.
Yeah, what do you think Kettering is a world-class engineering institution. Yeah. Do you want to send your kid to Kettering this upcoming semester?
Or even in 3 years from today.
Even in 3 years, people aren't going to forget about this completely. Flint doesn't have the most wonderful reputation, but the universities in particular have done some wonderful things in Flint. If you go to downtown Flint, it's actually quite cool down there. 2 or 3 nights a week, there's pretty good bands playing down there.
We hung out at a few bars. It was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. We've hung out down there.
Absolutely.
It's nice. That is almost 100% due to those universities downtown, because they're pretty much downtown. I would not be. I don't have a problem saying that they're going to see some significant enrollment challenges in the next few years.
What about other businesses too, though? Right. So Flint has a symphony. Flint has art museums downtown, kind of like this Renaissance art district going on downtown Flint. Those businesses probably are going to feel this too, right?
Well, they have a couple breweries too.
Yes.
Talk about your water. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's the real tragedy.
Yeah.
Well, no. They used filtered water, though, from the very beginning. Before this ever happened, they're quick to say.
Yeah, beer people are funny like that.
Yeah.
Yep, you've got Redwood Lodge, which is a brewery, and they're on a different water line than Flint. So that's an academic point, but still, what we're looking at too is you're looking at this idea that Flint, which was making an upswing with a lot of colleges. You've got Mott, you've got U of M Flint,
right.
You've got Kettering, you've got Baker,
State
you've got
is there now.
So you got a state campus which is there. So you had this transition going from Flint being this automotive place to where now you're kind of struggling to find what are we going to do now, and then you have this you have a lot of people coming in who's they're bringing fresh ideas. You got students are the place to get the ideas from, and then not only that, but you have this influx of workers and and there's a lot of stuff going on downtown Flint. Flint residents are survivors by nature. I mean, with all the stuff that's going on, you'll still get people who, anytime you say you're from Flint, it's a badge of honor because we have been through so much. You've got a town that has like a high violent crime rate, but like the fact that I don't feel in danger walking around Flint. I mean, to somebody who's on the outside looking in, they're like, "Oh wow, you're from." When I was living in Texas for a spell, I didn't have to say Flint, Michigan. I said I was from Flint, and people would be like, "Oh wow," and it's that's home.
Yeah.
That's where I find myself coming back to every time, and it's the negative connotations that come with these things that happen to us that we ultimately overcome that stick with you. So, oh yeah, Flint's that place with all the factories that don't make anything, and now Flint's that place with the water that you can't drink. But for the person who's living in Flint, I see Flint, that place where the constituents, the people that live there, they're not going anywhere. Flint is, Flint's my home. So, and the same can be said for a lot of other people. There's pride there.
What do you think about like people, Flint being on an upswing, people are coming there, right? So it's like you have an infusion of new people moving there with their families, people like Russ looking to buy a gorgeous home in a good neighborhood. Do you think people are just going to turn around and go back, like the people who have moved there? Do you think this is going to hurt Flint's overall recovery by having them people who've moved there now fleeing because of the situation? Or
I think there's short-term and mid-term and long-term. So at short-term, there's no question that this is really a punch in the gut for
when you're doubled over anyway, right?
Yeah. But what is most encouraging to me is in the last week I've heard person after person say, we're going to take this, just like what you said, we're going to take this and we're going to end up making our community better than we ever have. It's a chance to address some systemic injustices that have been done to the people of Flint. And there is a new resolve, a stronger feeling that come back and see us in 10 years, come back and see us in 20 years. We will recover from this, and we will turn this into something that could be an amazing story.
Well, that's one of the things that you alluded to about is the politics good or is the politics bad? Frankly, I think it's good right now. Typically you get a 2-week news cycle out of these sorts of things. The fact that we have a presidential election happening right now and a lot of people are paying attention to Flint.
Yeah, there's a Democratic debate coming, right?
There's a Democratic debate. Hillary Clinton was in town yesterday.
Bernie Sanders just opened a campaign office.
They're feeling the burn in Flint, too. I think that this is going to it's going to be an opportunity. And
are you allowed to say feeling the burn when you're talking about like skin rashes and stuff? I mean, that just doesn't.
That was poor choice. Number 3. I think that I wouldn't be leaving Flint. I would have still bought my house in Flint. And I think that a lot of people would still feel the same way. And I think it's going to be great that we're going to be able to leverage all of this publicity, all of this election, to get a lot of the things fixed that we need to have fixed.
Well, Russ, one of the things, Kathy kind of alluded to it, and what I think would be, if you look at a perfect scenario, I've been reading, a friend of mine on Facebook posted, what would be the perfect scenario of this? Basically, he alluded to taking Flint and creating the model for all future cities to embody regarding sustainable, renewable, basically every single thing that's being studied, being strived for, and putting Flint kind of on the map of being that city everyone looks at.
It actually, Bob,
right?
It's kind of
and it's sad that you had to hit rock bottom to get there, but
it's not. Yeah, you're right.
You can use it as a case study.
Has been happening. General Motors now has a couple of hybrid engine plants that they moved to Flint. And that's going on. The universities are there, and there's a lot of really cool stuff happening at all the universities. A lot of the Flint folks, myself included, this is particularly irksome. The people who live in Flint, it's really not their fault that General Motors left Flint. We didn't make that choice. It's really not the people who live in Flint's fault that their infrastructure was bad. We were not alive when that happened. It's also not the residents of Flint fault that their tax base has fallen and that we have, frankly, a city council that was ineffective or that these emergency managers came in. What's really nasty about it is that when people were complaining to the people who were supposed to be protecting them, we were complaining to the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, to the EPA, to the governor, they were getting blown off. They were getting derided with rhetoric. They would get emails that would say things like, "We're not the Department of Tasty Water."
And not to get, and I don't want to make this a political thing, but I know one of the things that Hillary Clinton fired off was, if this was happening in Birmingham, it would have got more attention.
It would have gotten complete attention. But we were talking about this before. There's not too many folks in Flint who donated a significant chunk of money to the Governor Snyder's election campaign. It's not one of the things we do. We're a poor city. And to be completely frank, we're not a particularly sophisticated city. A lot of folks in Flint are maybe not as educated and sophisticated. We don't know lawyers. Maybe I don't know a guy's name down there at the governor's office to call. Makes it real easy to brush all this crap under the rug. This will make it real easy for a governor or anybody in any state agency to roll their eyes, push off Flint, say, these people are complaining about the taste and the color of their water. It's safe to drink. Just be quiet and go back.
But Russ, we say they were complaining. Who was complaining? Community leaders?
Community leaders were complaining.
Politicians, residents, everybody.
Everybody was complaining. I'm not going to say too much state or city government was complaining. Unfortunately, our only newspaper in Flint happened to be a huge endorser of the switch to the Flint River water. So there was maybe an issue of them backtracking on that. But it's not supposed to matter how much money comes from a community for an election campaign or political contribution, whether or not you poison their kids.
You'd hope.
Well, and some of it, and we've all been there. Your day job, my day job, our day, we've all been in situations where there's that certain layer of institutional, call it the cloud layer, where you look up and you see pretty clouds. And the people above the cloud layer, they look down, they see pretty clouds. And it's basically the life of the people at the cloud layer to keep that running that way. And so, as the things are bubbling up, they don't get beyond the cloud layer, and they just kind of get shoved back down. And so, it's, that's why as some of these debates and stuff are going on.
Not to call out Birmingham, that wouldn't happen in Birmingham. Because in Birmingham, there's a lot of lawyers. Right. that live there. There's business executives who have money who can make a phone call into the governor's office, and that's not going to happen. I don't want to say environmental racism. Most assuredly, environmental classism. It simply would not have happened in those other cities.
That's fair.
I think that's a really important point to make because there are facets to this thing that. They're sort of like gems that if we can polish them the right way, then we can take a lesson from them. And that is to say that the population of Flint is largely it's a majority minority. You know what I mean? So this is me saying this as a 32-year-old white male. So I've never been the victim of discrimination. I've never been the victim of sexism. But what we can see here is that there's this block in our way that is I don't make over $50,000 a year. I don't have these connections, and that's a unifying thing. That if we take a look at who we're going through this with, it's not just one type of people, unless you want to say it's all poor people. So I think that's one thing that we can find as a unifying factor in this. That how do we move forward from it as a group of individuals who is the majority of us fit into this facet that's we can't get anything done by trusting the voices that we're supposed to be able to trust.
Well, and just to double back on getting things done, so I want to make sure we double back on just some of the challenges that are going on right now. So there's plenty of water, and there's plenty of water in these centralized locations.
Yes, transportation security is a big problem.
Did the 70% of people that don't have cars get to the water?
That's difficult in any city in the world, and it wouldn't even have to be a poor city. If this was happening in Manhattan, that would be an issue. People don't have cars.
Right.
Flint, Michigan, transportation insecurity is a huge problem. And our bus system is just about the caliber of Detroit, which to say it sucks would be kind. So if I don't have a car, if I live if I live more than a mile from a fire department, I'm going to have to take a city bus and spend 2 or 3 hours a day going to the fire department to get my water. The National Guard was delivering water. I think they've stopped that now. I think they're just doing distribution. They were doing delivery door to door. And every other day they would go through your neighborhood, and if you were home, they would give you water. But if you weren't home, they wouldn't leave the water on the porch. I don't know that. There's obviously some reason behind that. But transportation is a huge issue. And yeah, you guys should get a hold of your Uber folks and get them to get 25 Uber drivers to come to start delivering water.
Yeah, Mike White, if you're out there listening,
we could use help.
If Uber can deliver punchki, they can head up to Flint and deliver water to people. It shouldn't be that complicated.
But no, I mean the challenge. I mean that challenge would be anywhere, particularly in a poor city. Transportation insecurity is always a huge problem. And then when we get farther down the line with what Dr. Mona's talking about, transportation to these medical clinics, transportation to these early childhood development programs, transportation to hospital visits and all that stuff. That's always been a problem in the city, and it's going to be more of a profound problem in a city like Flint, with such a large chunk of an affected population all at one time. Because all of these kids who are under 6 are all going to be in high school at the same time.
You know me. It's not often that I'm speechless. It's a tad overwhelming.
It's overwhelming for me, too, to sit in the United States of America and have the Red Cross, the Air National Guard, all this disaster relief stuff around for something that could have been prevented. Now, mistakes
Well, just think
happen.
about this, Russ, how fragile of a society we didn't think we lived in. We're simply switching water suppliers led to this.
Well, and
right?
mistakes
And
happen.
that's
and they're human.
scary.
I mean, I honestly, there's human beings involved in these processes, and mistakes are going to happen when human beings are involved in these processes. But like Nuri pointed out, this 9-month gap between the first diagnosed lead poisoning from water case and today, why? Why was it?
Yeah, I mean that's yeah.
And I don't want to. I'm not.
But yet everybody
casting
knows
any-
what Kim Kardashian ate for lunch today.
Yeah, well,
just
that's
society. It's society. It's
And
crazy.
Please don't read that as me throwing any blame on any particular office or anything
No.
like that, because I don't know, and I'm not qualified to do that. But I mean, there were people in
When
place.
Dave reads them all the time, when those amoeba brain attacks, like one of them, and that makes national news, right? Like
Somebody swims in a dirty lake, and right.
This is tough mutter. And like 14 people got E. coli poisoning because someone crapped in the water, right? You hear about that all over the national news. It's like, what in the hell blocked this from making any headway other than?
Honestly, in my opinion, it's because it's a place like Flint. Because we all know the impression that Flint, Michigan, the reputation that Flint, Michigan has. It's a Rust Belt city. It's dying. It's fading. All you have to do to get shot is go walk through Flint, Michigan real quick. And nobody, I believe that's kind of an impression that we have. Not even like Rob pointed out, not even at the state level, at a national level, we're not, we don't have a lot of bright, shiny things that draw people's attention.
But everybody knows Flint. It's not like pick a random city in northern Michigan that nobody ever heard of. People know what Flint, Michigan is.
You're an hour north of Detroit at the most, right? I mean,
if the worst, even the dumbest correlation is Roger and me. Everybody knows. Like, people have seen that, whether high school civics class or something. You've seen that documentary.
So let's talk about now and moving into the future. So, one of the things that you had said was money. Money is needed right now. So I know, unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but so, I know that, Dr. Mona was, so I want to make sure I get this right. She's the founding donor of the Flint Child Health and Development Fund of the Community Foundation of Greater Flint. So obviously that's tied into what you have going on. How do people donate money to this? Where is that money going to go? How? Because it's slacktivism at its finest right now. It's easy for P. Diddy to get a quick, cheap PR heat to say, hey, I sent 1 million bottles of water to Flint. I wrote a check. Life's good. I get my PR. I got my name in the paper.
It's also easy to click the petition to remove the politician
Right.
that you don't
Slacktivism.
like. Slacktivism, right.
So, but that's that immediate kick. You're talking about a 20-year plan. I don't even know what I'm having for lunch tomorrow. I can't fathom. So, so where? I guess let's start there. How do people find out, or where do people send money? How?
So flintkids.org, pretty simple tag, flintkids.org. You go right to it, and you'll land. It will explain what the Flint Child Health and Development Fund is all about. The good news is, in the last 3 weeks, 4,400 people across the country, actually across the world, have done that. So we've gotten donations from 48 of the 50 states. We've gotten donations from Afghanistan.
What are the last 2 states? Who do we need to nag?
Wyoming and South Dakota.
It's always Wyoming. It's always
But from Afghanistan, from Belgium, from the United Kingdom, from Canada, from armed services across the world. So donations have been flowing in. We have raised a little over $2 million.
Now that money's going to
that
exactly
goes
what?
to a fund that an advisory committee, Dr. Mona being part of that, will take a look, and as soon as we know where the government funding is going to come in, the purpose of that fund is to augment what the government won't do. Now, that $2 million is a fabulous outpouring, but Dr. Mona's vision for that fund is $100 million.
And that would make that fund self-sustaining.
That is what she estimates for the kind of primary,
Well, and you think about
secondary,
it, you're talking about a
tertiary.
20-year plan.
Yes,
That's
over
$5 million
20
a year. That's not unreasonable
Right.
for the kind of issues that we've been talking about.
Right.
You mentioned the government and money. Do you think the government is doing enough? I mean, a state of emergency declared, that's pretty big. There's $80 million unblocked. There's a lot of work that's going to have to be done from an infrastructure perspective, and then plus just the people aspect of things. Is the government doing enough?
I think they're looking at what they can do. Somebody earlier said canary in the coal mine. I think what makes it so complicated, actually, for the state to respond is that we are one of several Rust Belt cities that have identical issues. Now, nobody else had lead poisoning as a man-made disaster, but I think part of what makes it so complicated is that so many of the same issues exist in all
Chicago, for instance,
Well,
actually.
Yes.
Even in Michigan, Detroit, Lansing, Marquette, Saginaw,
Yeah,
Bay
no.
City. I mean,
Benton
any
Harbor.
city that was built before 1970 is going to have those issues.
Right. So it's a comprehensive. I know they're looking at mental health resources because people have been traumatized. I mean, there is serious post-traumatic stress syndrome going on and real traumatization.
It's one of those things you feel you can trust, right? You turn on the water, you feel like what comes out of it, you can trust. But that's basically been proven wrong. These people enter totally, and then what they see happening to their kids, I can imagine that being so traumatic.
It's pediatricians need to learn to look for the symptoms. School, we have one school nurse for the whole district of Flint. Now, that is part of what the state has initiated some funds for, is to get more school nurses because that's going to be critical. More special ed teachers, more training for all primary grade teachers so they can begin to look for these kind of things. I mean, there's no stone that can be left unturned in terms of understanding as the symptoms begin to manifest themselves.
Oh, that's from a people standpoint, that's boggling, right? And you also have an infrastructure problem as well. Dr. Kaufman, what do you think is the next step from an infrastructure perspective?
Well, I think we can learn from past disasters with water in the United States. And the last big one we really had was in Milwaukee in 1993, where a protozoan called Cryptosporidium got into the water supply. It sickened 400,000 people and killed 69. That's the biggest water disaster we've ever had in the United States. And what the city of Milwaukee, clearly there was a loss of confidence in the water supply there, much like Flint. So what the city did was they started in the lake. They got the water from Lake Michigan, and they moved their intake pipe, and they moved it farther out because they found better quality water. And they told everybody that's what they were doing. They were completely transparent about what they were doing. And then they went into the plant, and they spent millions of dollars on better filtration. But then they went one step further. Instead of just testing for the 91 required contaminants in water that the Safe Drinking Water Act requires, they went over and above that and tested for more. That helped build confidence among the people that the water utility and the elected officials were on top of the situation. It was only then, after a couple of years, that people began to get confidence again in the water supply. And everyone you talk to in Flint wants the pipes up. And I think it's going to be very, it's necessary. I think.
Yeah, but you're talking
Bazillions.
800 million.
millions and millions and millions of dollars to do that.
Yes, you are. I mean, we've identified probably around 4,000 lead service lines initially. It cost about $6,000 to get rid of them each. So, that's tens of millions of dollars there. But that doesn't count the additional water testing that you have to do, required 72 hours after you take out the pipe, disruption.
I mean, if you look at it, this is a resilient country. I mean, Tylenol sales went up the year after the cyanide poisoning occurred.
Tylenol had a really high-end public relations firm, too. And
Absolutely.
The governor will get one, but...
Right.
No, it's a huge problem. We have to think, though, that we have to change our mindset in this country that infrastructure is not necessarily a cost, it's an investment. Mm-hmm. Because every time we invest in infrastructure, $1, we get $1.44 in return. Because if you don't invest in infrastructure, you lose jobs, you have public health issues.
Well, everyone, when they talk about infrastructure, the only thing that comes out is roads. And no one ever says water and sewage.
Water, sewage,
right,
rails.
But that never comes out in the conversation. Everybody just says roads, period. When I think if you expand that conversation, it might resonate.
Yeah. There's a website, I'm not sure, I have to verify the accuracy, but they said in Michigan the average driver pays a little bit over $500 a year due to bad roads because of potholes.
I remember reading that same stat.
I'm on my sixth left front tire, yeah.
This year.
2 years, yeah.
So, 19 different ways I want to go with this in my head. So flintkids.org, make a donation. That's the easiest way to do it. I mean, but from a... and we kind of, half joked about Uber. I mean, from a day-to-day operation, if people want to get involved, can they just show up in Flint and say, hey, I want to grab a couple cases of water and deliver them to people? How?
So the Red Cross is coordinating all volunteers. So if anybody wants to actually get on the ground physically and do something, the Red Cross is the best place to contact.
Okay.
I think it's important to realize that Flint residents are anxious to kind of be part of the solution, too. Right now, there's a complete crisis of confidence, and the trust has been just obliterated. But I think they are struggling that if they do see a good faith effort on the part of the state, then you're going to see residents kind of come to the forefront too, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks we're going to see the tide turn in terms of a real disclosure of what the state feels that they will commit to it.
Okay.
And that's a starting point. I mean, there's been a lot of pledges of this and pledges of that, but it needs to come down to if the city says, okay, we're going to pull up every pipe and replace every pipe and hire 25 new school nurses, then there's like Dennis, Sister Mona's, Dr. Mona's organization can look at the other aspects that aren't going to be taken care of that we can take care of.
Well, so I guess that's the point. I mean, are you kind of trapped in a waiting game right now? Waiting to see what's going to happen from the state or federal level?
From the big dollars perspective, I would say yes, but there are initiatives, especially around nutrition. So the fund that we hold, the Flint Kids Fund, we've already gotten a few proposals that are nutrition related, and we're looking about getting dollars out the door within a short time period. We had a major convening at the Community Foundation about people who are involved in healthy food, and all of those partners are coming together to say, how can we package and get right to the homes, right to kids, backpacks, use every kind of method to get these healthier food. We have a fabulous, fabulous farmers market, and the farmers market is starting to they get a prescription when the kids go to the clinic, which is in the farmers market. They get a prescription for healthy food that they can take and go to the produce places in the farmers market, get recipes, the produce, all of that. So we're really looking at some very creative things in terms of healthy nutrition.
That's also slightly more complicated in Flint than it would be in Rochester. Until a year ago, actually not even a year ago, Flint did not have a grocery store in the city limits. Flint is a food desert. So it's more than just getting information to people about, hey, this is, Brussels sprouts, food's rich in iron and calcium. It's very difficult for those folks to get to a grocery store to get that stuff if you don't have wheels. It's amazing, but yeah, Flint is a food desert.
In the past 2 years, there have been 2 grocery stores that were on the bus line that have closed down. So you have that to face too.
Here we sit as techies going, there's food delivery options, but the people that don't have transportation probably don't have internet access and/or.
They may have internet access, but I mean, it's not like you can call. I don't think we have any grocery stores that deliver food, and that's another aspect of transportation and security we're talking about. If I'm a single mother with 2 kids, going to the grocery store is a bus ride with 2 interchanges. It's going to take me 4 or 5 hours to do that.
Or carrying a case of water, same thing, right?
Or carrying a week's worth of groceries.
2 kids, right? Totally.
So, unfortunately, it's more than just telling people, hey, you need to eat more spinach. You need to make spinach actually available. And not out of a convenience point of view. You have to look at a food that's going to help mitigate this lead absorption as a medical necessity.
I'm not as upbeat and cheery as I usually am at the end of our episodes.
we have Comic-Con on next week.
We are running over time. I don't want to cut this short, but I want to make sure I go once around the room. Russ, first off, thank you for helping us get this episode together. This was
eye-opening,
incredibly informative. What have we not hit on that we should have?
I think we've hit on everything. I would just like to implore everybody to go to flinthitkids.org, take a look at that, take a look at the cool things that are happening, and donate money. That's what we really need. I hate to say we've had enough water. Water is not a problem right now. If that's what somebody can do, please send water. And honestly, thank you to everybody who's paying attention to this. It's been great. The local plumbers union from Detroit came up and spent the weekend installing filters in people's homes at no cost. and sincerely, thank you to everybody who's been out there jumping through this. Thank you. And all BS aside, thank you to the state government for acting and doing the things that need to happen. This doesn't at least at this point of view, blame doesn't need to come right now. We need to get the children
fix the problem. Blame
we need
later.
to get the children of Flint the care that they need, and that's paramount. Lawsuits can come later. I don't even care about that, and neither do the kids. That's all I got.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I guess what I would like to say is that we in Flint appreciate, like, you get a lot of flack about people saying, hopes and prayers, that doesn't do a whole lot. But what I would like to say is that, hopes and prayers do go far to know, like, that your voice is being heard, especially in the wake of like a lack of accountability or a lack of we've heard that the buck stops here, but the buck didn't stop here. And I would like to say that hearing that people are out there and they are listening and they're trying to do what they can. They're sending water. I know that I have close to 20 cases of water in my living room, but that came from somewhere. That came from individuals. And we got into this as a group. We're going to get out of it as a group. We're going to thrive at the end of it. But what I would like to say is, thank you to everyone who has those prayers out there. I would like to say thank you to the people who have sent water. I would like to say thank you to the people who are making these donations. And no press is bad press. So whether it's a celebrity who's looking for relevance again, or whether it's somebody who doesn't know how to help and is looking to help, I certainly don't want to portray or let anyone portray Flint as a place that's looking for a handout. We've heard early in the show, the canary in the coal mine. So speaking from the canary's point of view, it's kind of a rough thing when you're looking at a lack of trust, when you're looking at a lack of confidence in the infrastructure, when you're looking at all these things going on. But from the resident of Flint standpoint, we're going to get through this. So stay strong out there.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. So Dr. Kaufman, again, thank you as well for coming out. Anything we didn't touch on?
Well, I'd like to echo.
I'm sure there were a million things we didn't touch on.
I'd like to echo what Russ said. Donating to FlintKids.org is really a high priority right now. Getting them good nutrition is really important. Taking care of them now, before it's too late, really. Also, I think we realize now what a scourge lead is in the environment. I mean, it's a wake-up call. It's a national issue too. I mean, we have older communities around the country that have this legacy of this poison that lingers in people's homes and also in the pipes that deliver water. And I think we need to have a national debate about getting rid of it.
Interesting. So just to make sure I have this right. So, Kathy, again, thanks for coming out, and obviously, FlintKids.org. Is there anything else we didn't touch on from a your organization perspective or anything else?
I think it's just really important for people to know that while Flint is experiencing a tragedy, Flint is strong, Flint is resourceful, Flint has a lot going for it, and we need some help for sure to overcome kind of a monumental challenge that we have. But we're tough, and we are appropriately named. Flint is we really are. That's no accident. And I hope this becomes the beginning of the kind of national conversation that we need to have about investing in our infrastructure and in much better tax policy, all of that. I mean, I hope this is the beginning of a really good national debate.
Sounds like it needs to be. Yeah, so...
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thanks for coming out. This, like I said, I don't have the shiny, happy, I'm going to be awake all night.
But at the same time, there's some hope there, though, right? There's a positive message of hope, and that people will stick together through crisis, and that they need help, and people can help. And I don't know, I was a little bit scared about this episode, to be honest.
I was insanely scared about this one, but I mean, it opens your eyes, like I mentioned earlier. It opens your eyes to we're literally one. Doesn't matter what community you're a part of.
One guy with a spreadsheet making a decision away.
Now you went and ruined it for me. All right, I'm done.
But no, I mean, honestly, this was incredibly eye-opening. I mean, it's a lot of issues that I had not thought about. I mean, as much reading as I've done, especially in prep for this episode, even some of that stuff, I hadn't thought of, like, the transient nature of, the college kids and the workers and that kind of thing. And yeah, the legacy infrastructure. I mean, that's a huge looming issue that definitely needs to get taken on. So, yeah, this was episode 130 of the ITintheD show. If you haven't banged your head against a wall enough times to knock yourself unconscious, thanks for listening. We'll be at Hamlin Corner next Thursday. That is our next in-person casual networking event. And as always, you can find everything we are out at ITintheD.com. One more time, thank you all for joining us. Really, really appreciate the time and helping get the information and the word out there. I guess that's it.
Get involved. See you next week. Thanks for listening.
FlintKids.org.
At FlintKids.org.
The emergency destruct system is now activated.
Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women.
Long live Flash! You've saved your ass. Have a nice day.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Nice shooting, son. What's your name? Murphy.
Make the run. The run.
Game over, man. Game over.
It's over, Johnny. It's over.
Nothing is over. Nothing. You just don't turn it off.
I can't say no, and I don't really want to, so.
Well, especially with the back doors open.
Yo! Hold up! Time out! Time out! Y'all take a chill. You need to cool that shit out. And that's the double truth. Rude.
Bob loves it in the can.
I hope this was as much fun for you as it was for me.
That's why I like it in the can.
Joel the truth.
Bear me.
My job is to make sure this program is morally upright and cultural and wholesome.
Shut up, Mimsy! Shut up, Mimsy! Shut up, Mimsy!
Why would, Buick put their cars next to, the Bentleys? Why? That's not marketing. The alphabet. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I can't take that position.
That analogy sucks because it's right. Because you're getting your 8-track tuned up. Are we at a break yet? Yeah, so now I'm just doing stupid stuff to make me laugh.
Venture capital is not the end game.
When are we going to talk about me?
Jane, you ignorant slut.
It's my show. I can say what I want.
Yeah. Kiss my ass, go home, unplug, get off the goddamn internet. You are everything that is wrong with the internet right now.
You're so white right now.
I'm the whitest guy in the room. Just explain it to me.
I love this city. I was banging on the wang.
Really? Should we talk about this? Tag team it. Should I keep going or should I stop?
Can I just say, it's been great being on a show that talks about Mickey Rooney dying for 20 seconds and then poop for 10 minutes.
This is a previously recorded episode of the ITintheD show.